Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Cardinals, your daily Arizona Cardinals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Rise up, Red Sea, on a bittersweet day in the Valley of the Sun. It's Locked On Cardinals, part of your Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You know, winning your fantasy football league starts with the right data. Vinny Iyer of the Sporting News provides you with the edge you need in fantasy football leagues. Locked On Fantasy Football is a daily podcast all year round, just like Alex and I talking Cardinals. Vinny's talking fantasy, and in your team, it never fails. Subscribe to Locked On Fantasy Football. Get geared up for your draft. Bo Brock here. Give me a follow on Twitter at BOBRACK. Alex Clancy here at Clancy's Corner. And the day after the Phoenix Suns, their incredible run ends in the NBA Finals, ran into an absolute buzzsaw in Giannis Antetokounmpo. The Greek Freak, 50 points in a decisive Game 6. You know, good for Giannis. Good for the Suns after just 10 years of futility. It's got the Valley pumped up. It's got the sports fans itching for what's next. And Alex, what's next?
Cardinals football, baby. So here's the thing, and Bo and I have discussed this, okay? We are going to give a 6-day moratorium on pubbing the Arizona Cardinals season, okay? Feel like the Suns deserve it. Feel like it wouldn't do any sort of, it wouldn't have any sort of positivity meandering throughout the Valley if we jumped on it too quickly. The body's not cold yet. It's time. Yeah. I mean, and this gives us time to collect our thoughts. Bo is one of the better social media minds that Locked On has to offer. He is going to come up with an epic welcome to Arizona Cardinals season tweet on Monday of next week. But listen, we have to give the Suns their due and the Bucks their due. I'll tell you what, put some damn respect on Chris Middleton. Put some respect on Drew Holiday. Like, basketball fans have known about Chris Middleton for the last 4 or 5 years because he was one of the budding stars that nobody knew about. He seemed to come out of nowhere, scored 18 points a game a couple years ago, and then really took that step up, got paid. Drew Holiday getting traded for 3 first-round picks was way too much. Still, it was way too much. But they win the championship. He's like Draymond Green with an offensive game from the point guard position. The dude is freakishly strong, especially for how slight he looks. And if you ask how strong he is, ask the backcourt of the Phoenix Suns how strong Drew Holiday is on the defensive side of the ball.
Drew Holiday, one of 3 NBA Holiday brothers.
It's amazing.
Pretty incredible. So
and Giannis too.
Giannis too. And then on football side, you've got 3 Watt brothers. Talk about social media. It was J.J. Watt last night. I mean, talk about the body not even cold. And also, you're just like, which team were you rooting for, J.J. Watt? But, we talk about the excitement now as you transition from Suns to Cardinals. Here's J.J. Watt, hell of a run, Suns. The Valley is heating up. Just trying to piggyback the momentum. You got to feel it. And as we sit here on a Cardinals podcast, we still don't know. Minority Phoenix Suns owner Larry Fitzgerald doesn't get a ring there, as Josh Weinfuss pointed out. Could he potentially come back and compete for a ring at the NFL ranks? We got some insight from Jim Trotter, a very well-respected NFL scribe, the other day. We'll get into what Jim said because it's pretty fascinating. Larry stands on one side of this, and then the Arizona Cardinals are on a completely other side of the spectrum. We'll tell you where the organization stands, where Larry Fitzgerald stands, and then another cryptic tweet from our guy, Chandler Jones. Chandler Jones just continues to fire off emojis and then send the Arizona Cardinals their Twitter following into a frenzy. We'll try to diagnose his latest cryptic tweet. And it pains me to say this, but I kind of agree with Bill Barnwell, the ESPN writer, in his latest article about where the Arizona Cardinals skill position players rank against the rest of the NFL. We'll tell you where they are by the end of this podcast. So let's get into the conversation about Larry Fitzgerald, Alex, because it's something. It's tough to continue to just advance a story where there's just really no new news the entire offseason. Like you can't get anything. He's a steel trap, Larry Fitzgerald is.
Yeah. I posed the question because we talked a lot about, early on, this was the latest date where he said he was coming back. I think it was mid-February, mid-March. I can't remember. I think it was mid-March was the latest that he ever said, that he ever waited to say that he was coming back. And I posed the question, Bo, is there ever going to come a point where this becomes selfish on Larry Fitzgerald's part? Is he holding the organization hostage with his decision? Now, we've obviously dissipated from that. That's not the case anymore. But as we preface this before you play the Jim Trotter audio, something he says towards the tail end made me cringe. It absolutely made me cringe. And this is something that I've been thinking about for a long time. Larry Fitzgerald has been one of the most non-quarterback overpaid players over the last 3 seasons for his actual performance on the field. Not talking about leadership, not talking about icon status with an organization, how much he means. Pure play on the field, Larry Fitzgerald's been overpaid, handsomely overpaid. And I know you're going to jump into Jim Trotter here momentarily. The last thing Jim Trotter says here kind of pissed me off a little bit. It's like, all right, why is that still something that we need to talk about with a 38-year-old who's underperformed over the last 3 years?
Well, I don't know if that's necessarily fair, but has he been given the opportunity to do what he's paid so handsomely for? I mean, if you look at this, I saw that Larry Fitzgerald, as far as what he averaged in the postseason, 104 yards per game. Like, nobody who's played in more than 4 or 5 playoff games has averaged more than Larry Fitzgerald in their playoff career. He averaged over a touchdown a game, so he showed up when the lights shine the brightest. Sure. Let's get into it, though. I want to hear what you're talking about as far as the Jim Trotter, what he says at the end of this. This is about a minute clip. Jim Trotter joined NFL Network, and he was talking about Larry Fitzgerald. Here's what he said.
Well, I reached out to him yesterday and asked him, is there any new news? Has he made any decisions? And he told me no new news. He said he's still not under contract. And I asked, are you seeking to secure a new contract? And he said, I still haven't decided on that. So at this point, we don't know. What I do know is that the organization definitely would like to have him back if he wants to play. They like the energy that he brings to the franchise. They like his presence in the locker room. And here's the key part. They like his ability to make catches in crucial situations. Now, obviously, he's not the same guy he was a decade ago, but in crucial situations, they believe he comes up with plays that they need. So from that standpoint, if he decides he wants to play again, there is a spot for him. But as you know as well, Andrew, money talks in these situations, and Larry Fitzgerald is a true businessman.
I don't disagree with these. Is that what you're talking about? He's a true businessman?
Up until then, everything 100% agree. You and I were pounding the table for Larry Fitzgerald to get more targets last year. It's like the dude's got the best hands in football, probably still. He doesn't need gloves. The dude's been doing it for 15 years. It's throwing the ball more. But what Jim Trotter, and Ken Summers, AZ Central columnist, one of the best in the business, been covering them forever. We're going to try and get him on the show at some point. His big tagline for Larry Fitzgerald is Larry loves money. Larry loves money. Larry's so when you say that somebody's a true businessman, that means they're not going to take a penny less than what they took the year before, it seems like. And that's or something close to that, Bo. You can't give him more than $3 or $4 million to come back at this point, in my opinion. And if that's not enough for him and he goes and signs a 10-year deal somewhere else, that's something that could have very uncomfortable conversations permeating through the valley. That's no longer like Larry, go win a Super Bowl. If he goes to Jacksonville for $12 million, I'm not saying he will, but that just opens up a different can of worms that we didn't necessarily think we'd get to at this point in Larry's career. Right. We'd love to have him back, obviously.
No doubt about it. It would kind of change the perspective or perception, I should say, of Larry Fitzgerald more so in the corner of Patrick Peterson, where you say all these things and then at the end of the day, it's just money talks, and that's the only thing you'll listen to. I think that Larry Fitzgerald has a little bit more integrity than that, and not too much of a knock on P2, but I think that Larry Fitzgerald understands that his legacy is worth more and can be worth more in the long run if he continues to he would not go sign with the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I know that's just just using them as an example. Because, they're the lowest tier of the NFL currently. So look, I don't think it's a distraction. I was surprised to hear from Jim Trotter because it was pretty definitive when he said that the organization would welcome him back with open arms. That they haven't moved on, that it isn't the same as Pat Pete, where they were like, okay, you know what, 10 years, thank you, here's your gold watch, you'll be in the Ring of Honor in a couple of years, go chase the biggest paycheck you possibly can. They still feel like Larry Fitzgerald on and off the field brings enough to merit whatever they can conjure up as far as finances are concerned. But it does have to come with the caveat that, look, he has to do it to where they'll have enough money to add guys throughout the regular season. And if somebody becomes available on the trade market, because the NFL trade deadline has become so much more active than it once was, that they can add guys to this roster without breaking the salary cap bank, with Larry Fitzgerald coming back potentially for season, 18?
Absolutely. No, very well said. I mean, it's true. Because normally in other sports, once you sign a big money deal, you are a trade asset immediately, regardless if it looks like you are at that point. But the NFL is different, to where you're not going to cut Fitz. You're not going to trade Fitz. So if you give him $10 million for 1 year to be the wide receiver 3/4, that's just bad business, in my opinion. And of course you want him back. This isn't a loathsome rant on, an anti-Larry Fitzgerald rant. But man, there's got to be a middle ground. There's got to be a middle ground if he comes back.
Brack, Alex Clancy, Locked On Cardinals, part of your Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, officially Cardinals season. We're just going to throw that out there a little bit. Diamondbacks, they're about 80 games under 500. I know that they're not playing well. No, they're not a good baseball team, not a good baseball club.
I think the over-under was 78.5 to start the season.
No kidding.
So they might have to get 2 seasons in one to get there.
Rough. That was according to our friends over at BetOnline. Coming up, our guy, Chandler Jones, can't help himself. Another cryptic tweet. And also we'll get into where I actually agree with ESPN writer Bill Barnwell, the NFL expert. We'll get into what he recently put out, what he published, some interesting work in the Arizona Cardinals and where they stack up as far as their skill players against the rest of the league. It's all coming up. It's Locked On Cardinals, part of your Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So Giannis took it home last night. The Phoenix Suns, their season comes to an end. Now you have Major League Baseball. You've got NFL futures. You've got some UFC, MMA action. That's what's going to keep you going until the first opening kickoff of the NFL season, which I believe is about 50 days away as of today. BetOnline is the fastest, easiest way to bet on all your sports action. Baseball season in full swing. Before the next pitch, head over to BetOnline on your laptop, mobile device. Check out your great sporting news, sign-up bonuses, and contest information. I say sign-up bonuses because right now, if you head over to the website, betonline.ag, or on your cell, you can sign up today and receive a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. You put in $100, you get $50 free to play around with. BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts. So it's like it feels a weekly occurrence that this happens. I'm scrolling Twitter, and then what do we see? Chandler Jones. Just is that a wry smile emoji? How do you describe that one? A mischievous emoji? Regardless.
Mischievous is a very underutilized word, Bo. I'll stick with mischievous.
Okay.
Mischievous? Is it mischievous?
You're asking the wrong guy as far as
mischievous.
Right. So we know Chandler Jones. There's obviously been speculation as he enters his contract year, who, by the way, if you were to restructure or sign an extension, it could potentially free up more 2021 salary cap dollars potentially, because his cap number right now is pretty high. It's like 21 mil. So if they were to sign him to a lucrative extension, they could backload that and push some of the money and have a more team-friendly cap number. Which would open up more money for Larry Fitzgerald. Is that what this means? Does it mean that it was pre-Suns tip-off? Maybe he thought the Suns were going to push it to Game 7, like Guy Fieri saying Suns in 7 on Twitter yesterday. I don't know. Any insight on this one?
No, I mean, here's the thing with Chandler Jones, Bo. if you extend him, you're not going to be upset like you would have been with Patrick Peterson. And I would. You know what? Like with Patrick, it's like, you know what? Play out the last year of your contract, then we'll see, bro. I mean, you haven't shown us much since 2018. With Chandler Jones, I feel like he's got more carte blanche. He's got more clout with what he's done thus far as an Arizona Cardinal, to where if there is a restructure that pivots into a contract extension to free up some money for Fitz or somebody else, you got to be okay with it. You got to be okay with it, right? It's not like he played 16 games last year and had 4 sacks. Sure, he didn't get off to the quickest start, but who cares? He probably still would have got to double-digit sacks by the end of the season. So do you agree with that, or do you think that that's playing with fire and you kind of got to see what the dude's got before you give him any more cash?
Yeah, I think I'm on the latter there. Actually,
really?
I would
Okay.
like to see, because we just see production at his age in the NFL, and this is more like your old school NFL where you'd see guys who hit the big 3-0 and their production falls off a cliff. And we didn't see a lot of production, sure, albeit 5 games from Chandler Jones, and the pass rush actually improved significantly without number 55 in the lineup. But I still think that they're going to be improved. That's going to be an area where you're going to see actually more production. It might not even show up in the box score, but you're going to see it as far as opposing quarterbacks under duress way more often with J.J. Watt and Chandler Jones coming after you. If he has a good season, yeah, I say that if he puts, kind of turns the screws on you guys and forces them to negotiate, one final contract for him, I don't know, 3-4 years and some guaranteed dollars, good for him. I'm not going to have a problem with that. But I think as far as doing it right now without knowing what's going to come back after the biceps injury, I don't know if that's good business for the Arizona Cardinals.
Well, the one upside of doing it now is you're running unopposed because you're not going to franchise tag him. So then you also have to, you have to compete with all the other organizations in the NFL. If you do it now, you give him a 2-year extension with 30 more guaranteed. It's not that much. 30 may be a lot, but 30 total from where he is now. I don't know. I'm not Michael Giannetti from Spotrac, so I don't know exactly how much money he's guaranteed to make this year out of his base. But if you can, 2 years is hedging your bet. And the worst thing that happens is, and what we've seen a lot with contracts nowadays is you have one more guaranteed full year, and then you have an opt-out after 2022. There are ways to structure it to where you can hedge your bet if he doesn't play well this year. I just think you're playing with fire because he's going to want a J.J. Watt deal after the end of next season. So if you can get in front of it and just go based on the information you had before last season, which is still, pretty recent, I would be much more apt to do that than gamble, at least with me.
If you look at the guaranteed money for J.J. Watt, it's about 20. So, 30, it might have people gasp, and that's what Bud Dupree.
I'm saying guaranteed, including what he's making this year.
Right. So, but then you look at where J.J. Watt's cap number is this year. Like I said, you could save yourself some money this year and potentially next year when you look at this window. After this season is going to be the first season that Kyler Murray and probably his representatives are going to start, knocking on Steve Keim's office door and saying, hey, let's start negotiating that next contract. And that's where you're going to need a little nest egg. So we'll see. Can you do that? Can you make Chandler Jones happy while, putting some pretty big guaranteed dollars at the end of a deal, whatever future deal potentially could hold for Chandler Jones? It's Locked On Cardinals, part of your Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for tuning in to our YouTube channel. We appreciate everybody that's listened, everybody that's subscribed. We're making a quick rise to 200 subscribers already. That's fun. Also, if you're checking us out just on Apple Podcasts, thank you for tuning in, or wherever you find podcasts. We appreciate you guys checking us out. Bo and Alex hanging out with you. One last segment here before we get you on to your rest of your Wednesday. We're going to be talking about Bill Barnwell's latest rankings from ESPN. He took all the skill position players and ranked them for every team in the NFL. Where did the Arizona Cardinals fall? It's actually pretty similar to pretty much every other rankings about the Cardinals this entire offseason. We'll tell you where that is. It's Locked On Cardinals, part of your Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Rock Auto. rockauto.com. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes, models, it's impossible for your local chain of auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. You go to buy anything for your car, and very rarely do they have it in stock, but there's somebody on their computer choosing the only brand in their warehouse that they happen to carry when you have Rock Auto right there on your computer, on your cell phone. Save time, save money when using Rock Auto. Why choose to spend 30, 50, even 100% more on the same parts from your chain store or car dealership when you can just go to Rock Auto, which is a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. And Rock Auto's prices are reliably low for every customer. They have everything you need: brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, even new carpet. Your carpet, you spill coffee or whatever it may be, Chick-fil-A sauce, can't get it out, get yourself some new carpet. Am I talking from experience? Of course I am. Go to rockauto.com right now. Use and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Write Locked On Cardinals on How Did You Hear About Us in the box so they know that Alex and I sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. Built Bar, one last ad here for you guys, telling you about the best tasting protein bar ever. It's not even close. You've got 9 original flavors that you can always rely upon, and then you've got limited time flavors, which are always delicious. And right now, that's orange and that's strawberry, and they're here all summer long. Go to Built.com, try out which Built Bar, find out which Built Bar you think is the best, because not only are they delicious and 100% covered in chocolate, they're just as nutritious. 17 grams of protein, 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and only 4 grams of net carbs. And you know what? Going on this week, we've got the Olympics. Those guys, their body's their temple. They're not going to mess around with what they put there in their body. And Built Bar is the official protein bar of the Olympic athletes of Team USA. Go to Built.com. Eat the same protein bars that the Olympians are eating. Use the code LOCK15. You'll get 15% off your first order using the promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at Built.com.
Yeah, get orange. Just trust me. Seriously, just trust me. Trust me. Trust me.
It's a great. I don't know if you wouldn't take 2 sweet flavors like that, orange and then sugar, but it is a fantastic combination. I completely agree with you. I was blown away when I first tried the orange flavor. I'm kind of bummed it's kind of a limited time flavor. It's like pumpkin spice. Why isn't it just around year round?
Pumpkin spice should never be around. Those are 2 different things. It's
one of the more popular just flavors right now. I mean, there are women with Ugg boots and flannel on that are waiting in just long lines for just pumpkin spice.
Is it already ready? Is it already out? It's too early.
It comes out earlier and earlier each and every year, just like Christmas music starting earlier each and every year. All right, last segment here. So Bill Barnwell, just known for being an Arizona Cardinals critic, very rarely has anything nice to say about the organization. And, sometimes he's right. But a lot of times, like his criticism of the Arizona Cardinals offseason in 2020, their signing of Jordan Phillips and having to get creative with as far as where they're putting the guaranteed dollars, Devondre Campbell, when that defense absolutely needed to be revamped. I absolutely disagreed with Bill Barnwell. As far as where he stands with his latest ranking and the position players, the offensive arsenals around the league, I don't necessarily disagree with where he has the Arizona Cardinals. So to kind of give you an idea of what he's writing about here is he's not writing about, the full product, Kyler Murray, DeAndre Hopkins, the offensive line with Rodney Hudson and all that. He's not taking that into account. He's pretty much just taking your running backs and your wide receivers and tight ends, the guys that your skill position players that are going to be out there making the big plays for your offense. And the Arizona Cardinals, we know this, that outside of DeAndre Hopkins, the cupboard's pretty bare.
Yeah.
So Bill Barnwell, I think appropriately ranks them kind of in the middle of the pack, 18th overall. Now, this can certainly change if there's an emergence from Chase Edmonds. If he can take over the RB1 role, I think that will help out significantly. And also you've got that wide receiver 2 position. If a guy like if AJ Green, Rondale Moore, or Christian Kirk, you have 3 guys, one of them has a good season, they probably boost up a little bit more just because DeAndre Hopkins is that good.
And they only drafted 1 offensive player, right?
I mean,
it was only Rondale Moore, right?
Michael Manette,
that's right. That's right.
Yeah,
7th round. That's right.
Right.
The center out of Penn State. Where was he? I can't remember where he went to school. Penn State.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, and when I looked at it first, titles are incredible. The sticker shock value, offensive, but if you don't put the quarterback in place, it makes sense. And really, the fringe guy is AJ Green. Nobody's expecting him to do anything this year. Nobody's expecting him to do anything. 800 yards receiving would be a win for the Cardinals. I think he's going to get closer to 1,000 if he gets the opportunity, if he stays healthy. But he's kind of the linchpin of the whole thing, because without him, it's DeAndre Hopkins and no running backs, that are really hitting the national, radar. I guess that's about right. Because DeAndre Hopkins is arguably he's the best receiver in the NFL, in my opinion.
If Bill Barnwell went out there and was putting all his stock in Chase Edmonds to actually take the jump this year, I think that he would have a lot more people disagree with him than would agree with him. We know about Chase Edmonds, but not a lot of people know that, and we don't know if he's capable of taking on all those touches, 20 touches that you would think a bell cow running back would have to take. Here are a couple teams that they're surrounded by, or here are a couple teams that you would be shocked, but it makes sense, that are just ahead of them on the list: the Denver Broncos and the New York Giants. And it's like, whoa, now wait a second. But the Broncos, they've put some of their draft capital, especially high draft capital, in their offense. They've got first-round pick in Jerry Jeudy. They've got a couple second-round picks in Cortland Sutton, who's coming back from injury. Javonte Williams, the talented running back out of North Carolina.
They traded up to get, right? They traded up in the second round to draft him.
Yeah. Their biggest issue is Drew Lock soaring passes over all their heads. Mm-hmm. And then you've got New York Giants, and you're still saying, Daniel Jones. I think Kyler Murray is probably the only good quarterback coming out of that draft, because I've seen Daniel Jones play. He fell down without a defender within 10 yards of him on it could have been an 85-yard touchdown run, but they still have Saquon Barkley coming back. They just signed Kenny Golladay. I think Shepard is a pretty good wide receiver too. Evan Ingram is a decent tight end. I think that as far as pound for pound, their skill positions are just a little bit more well-rounded than what the Cardinals have in DeAndre Hopkins and everybody else.
I agree. And the interesting thing, Chase Edmonds, I know he was a mid-round pick, and I know he came from Fordham, and Budda Baker came from Washington, but in some respects, Pac-12 guys that play at 9 o'clock at night may as well be from a mid-major, because nobody watches them play on the East Coast, where it quote-unquote really matters in SEC and I-95. But Budda Baker was Chase Edmonds until Budda Baker became Budda Baker. Like, there were still people that texted me, again, some of my buddies that have been around football their whole lives. Who the hell is Budda Baker? When he signed his big deal. And that's not to say that Chase is going to be jumping up to where Budda was, where he pretty much became an all-pro guy overnight. It seemed that one hit on Thursday Night Football against George Kittle put everybody like, oh my God, who is this kid? Who is this guy? And
that's it.
The Chase Edmonds thing, we'll see. Obviously, it's not that case, but as you mentioned, he's not a national guy yet, but he could be a 1,500 all-purpose yard guy away from being that, and 10 touchdowns.
It's an interesting comparison, because, as you mentioned with Budda Baker, here's a guy that signed this lucrative deal. Two guys could be, and it'd be on the offensive side of the football, the counterpart to Budda Baker, which would be Christian Kirk and Chase Edmonds. Couple unknowns, guys that have been in the league that are going into contract years that at any point they could have an extension come their way. And it's going to make a headline, and people are going to be like, well, we don't know too much about them, but the 2021 season, it's their chance, just like Budda Baker last year and the previous year, it's their chance to pop. And they certainly have the potential to do so, but to put together week in and week out, that's another thing. Budda Baker, he's done that. Those guys have to do that.
Yeah, and when Chase is going to get the opportunity. Like, Budda was forced into it because they needed somebody over the top. And the fact that they drafted him and he started pretty much day one, the Jalen Thompson draft from the supplemental draft was huge, even though it didn't seem like it initially. Chase Edmonds is going to get every opportunity on the planet for the first 5 or 6 weeks of the season, because they're going to force that bleep down our throat, because that's Steve Keim's plan. It's Chase Edmonds, and James Conner's the backup dancer. So Chase will get the opportunity. You hope that he does. He's a good kid, man. He's one of the better interviews that I've done. Him and Budda Baker are really close. Like, that was one of the most fun interviews I've ever done, was doing an interview with both of them together. And they're not big in stature, but the dudes are absolute animals. Like Chase Edmonds, just because he's small doesn't mean he can't take a hit, doesn't mean he can't block, and the same for Budda Baker, obviously, that we've seen. So we hope that Chase can jump. We're just hesitant because we haven't seen it yet when he's gotten the opportunity.
Do us a favor, like this video on YouTube. It only gives us more incentive to create more of it. We've got our Throwdown Thursday going down tomorrow. Great debate between Alex and myself. A little bit too, for my taste today, too much agreeing. So we're going to disagree on some things. Tomorrow, Johnny Venerable, Revenge of the Birds. He joins us every Friday. And I think we're going to catch up with our guys from 12 News, whether it's Cam Cox or, Ryan Cody, guys who have been busy with this Phoenix Suns team. And now they're going to turn their attention to this Arizona Cardinals 2021 squad. We're going to talk to everybody. Kirsten as well, Suzelle. We're going to talk to her. Can't wait. That's coming up on upcoming editions of Locked On Cardinals. Mash that like button, subscribe. We will talk to you tomorrow. It's Locked On Cardinals, part of your Locked On Podcast Network.